Welcome, John. Welcome to the first member deep dive of FOH. Mate, where does this little deep dive find you?
So I'm in a weird crossroads, Rob. I am just a hair's breadth before the age of 50, which feels really weird. I know that, you probably look at it and go, well, that's just silly, but it's a bit of an odd place. I'm actually unemployed right now. I was laid off from oil and gas because that's how oil and gas works. Back in November. But I actually have network is everything. I wish that 30-year-old me could have a conversation with 49-year-old me and be like, listen, the most important thing you can do is make as many contacts as possible, because this is going to save your bacon for your entire working career in terms of getting opportunities where no opportunity might exist.
That's true. I mean, you're in Calgary, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
So and Canada is certainly a powerhouse when it comes to your sector.
Yeah.
So no doubt to Australia. I mean, we're very good in Australia about digging holes and exporting them. That's very much our strong point. We're the lucky country only because actually it's a term that was used for Australia. Australia's a lucky country, and I think it was a backhanded compliment. We're lucky because we actually arrived at a place that's rich in minerals and rich in exportable product that the world wants. Outside of that, we really haven't done too much else. But it's okay. We're specialists at digging. What are you smoking there?
Well, I'm smoking a nudie. Obviously no band, because that's how the nudies work. I haven't smoked this size yet. I'm not even actually sure what size
Hang
that
on.
is. It almost looks like one of the.
Yeah,
I think we're smoking the same cigar.
That's a Fat Fundadoras.
Yeah.
Which, guys, Fat Fundies will be out in a couple of days' time. So Fat Fundi is 44 gauge by 7.5 inch, I believe.
That's so hilarious. We did not plan this at any. I just reached in the humidor. I'm like, we're gonna be talking for a while. This should be the right cigar. This is a great start, by the way. Like a really sort of medium full palate coating. Exactly kind of what I was in the mood for an evening cigar. This is delightful.
This is a cigar that we're not here to really to talk about nudies, but this is a cigar that has required a little bit of time down. We've actually kept them back from launching. It's required a little bit of time down. Yeah, it's beautiful. It's a lovely opening. Yeah.
Yeah.
A bit of
goes
time
well
down
with whiskey.
Find itself, but it's very different to anything we've done.
Yeah, for sure. So and again, not to talk too much about nudies, we were chatting on Sunday night. So this is the one that you were saying you were very proud of, correct?
This is something that we really wanted to do, because it's called a Fat Fundi. It's not a Fundadoras. It's 44 gauge, but we wanted something that was in that lineup to replace. I love a Fundadoras. I love that Vitola. I love that Vitola, and this is not it in terms of that level of a great Fundi, but we wanted to get something that was close and something that filled that need and filled that market for our members. Look, our members are normally Cuban cigar smokers. I'm going to segue on that and say, what was the first cigar that actually got you? When did you first start smoking cigars?
It's one of those things where, because I was thinking about this for another show a few weeks ago, I want to say it was like late 2000s. So certainly not as early as a lot of, especially people in the forum. I feel like, people have multi-decades of cigar experience, but I think I want to say it was like 2007, 2008. And I don't even know what the first cigar was. I know a lot of people really remember their first cigar, but I want to say it was like an Alec Bradley sort of just a big cigar International bundle pack that I bought. and then I think I smoked a Monte Cristo 4 right afterwards. So like, because they're so available, I didn't even think about, non-Cuban versus Cuban. I was just like grabbing cigars to smoke. And it's, I mean, even at that time, as soon as I smoked, because I already kind of had it in my head, I was like, I kind of want to try cigars. I've always kind of, the aroma of the cigar tobacco has always appealed to me. And as soon as I lit up the first cigar, I was like, oh yeah, this is totally for me.
Do you remember the first cigar that actually got you hooked? Like, I mean, like the first cigar you smoked, you said the wow moment, the eureka moment that we often get.
I think it was the Alec Bradley Tempest of all things, which goes way, way back. It was just so much more full bodied, and so much more complex than sort of the, I don't want to dismiss catalog stuff, but I was smoking a lot of just generic catalog stuff because I had no idea what I was doing. And so the Tempest was this first cigar I went, wow, this is really good. And then I think the next step up, I went to a Don Pepin Garcia Blue, which was very full bodied at the time. And then I kind of, branched out. I think I ended up ordering some Monte Cristo D4s, Romoneones, and I think I even got like a fiver of Cohiba. And I was like, I just started filling humidors rapidly because I was like, I need to try everything. So I was going crazy with samplers.
You went through that classic early adopter stage where your first 3 years probably represented 80% of your buys for the next 5 or 6. You see
Thank
it all
goodness
the
I was
time.
single.
Yeah. Well, and things were a lot cheaper back in those days, so it was a lot easier to get done. But I noticed that with a lot of new members. I mean, they go. We use the terminology Burko in that first 4 months.
We say buck wild.
Yeah. Yeah, first 24 months, they buy everything. And often I used to say, look, you need to slow down. I mean, just you don't have to
pace yourself.
Try things and see how you go. It doesn't work. No, I don't think anyone listens. But in the end, you end up with a lot of boxes that you probably don't really want. And that was before you could really trade. You could really trade your way or flick boxes out. Although, 2007 you came in, so you came in during really a golden moment of forums, and Facebook groups were just starting to kick off, if I remember correctly, around that time. Which were your first forums? I mean, you've been on FOH since 2012. But what were your first forums and first Facebook groups that you can recall?
I want to say, well, I know I was on Reddit early, and I don't remember when Reddit started. I think Reddit was, I want to say 2010. And I remember joining our cigars, and I was like member number 358. Like it was, I mean, it's ridiculous to think about now because I think they have 120,000 or 160,000 members now, possibly more than that. But it was just so intimate back then. You knew every single member. You knew their name. You knew where they were. You could chat on a regular basis. And I think I was on cigars.com. I was on some of the local Alberta Canadian forums. I think it was COH, and trying to remember. It's Canada Cigar Forum, I think, was one of the. And I mean, I was, I was just trying to reach out and trying to learn from other people. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And so I was like following posts and listening and asking, all the new questions that new smokers ask, because I didn't know anything about anything. And I think we kind of started, people talk about the pandemic kind of being the virtual hangout. But we were doing virtual hangouts in the 2010, 11, 12 era, because we would actually do at least once a week a virtual hangout on Google Hangout or something like that, I want to say. And we'd have 10, 12 guys in there just talking tobacco and talking about what they smoked recently and what they liked. And it was it was good because there's just isn't the local cigar culture, at least at the time here in Calgary for me. So it was nice to chat with people from around the world, you know?
And I think the internet's been a wonderful thing for cigars. I'm not talking about just cigar sales. I'm just talking about the ability for people in remote areas. Not that Calgary's remote, but like I had guys in Kazakhstan, I had guys in the military, I had guys in Africa working in mines who would use the forum and use those Facebook groups or those various. Google Hangouts was one. I'm not even sure that's still a thing. But just the ability to engage in a hobby that they couldn't get to. Certainly in countries such as Australia, where they really started to crack down on cigars and cigar lounges. You know, online was the only place you could really go. You know, that's why I love places such as, or many places in the United States. I love many places in Europe, Asia, where cigar lounges are so common.
Oh yeah.
You know, in Canada, it almost doesn't occur. In Australia, there's 3 or 4 that I'm aware of in Australia, and 2 of them are legal, and then Western Australia, and the rest, well, it is what it is. But I love that aspect about being online. I love that aspect. People can engage, people can ask questions, and those early forums, those early groups, they were robust areas. Yeah, people were great to that. What a great place to learn, and people were good to lend a hand, unless you started asking about sources for Cuban cigars.
Right.
Although you may just after that. Remember, you needed to have the secret handshake to get your.
You had to have the secret handshake. Yes, keep it secret, keep it safe. But I mean, listen, I would say the certainly our cigars. That's where I met Frank from Toronto. We became fast friends. We would hang out virtually on a regular basis. And I would really kind of credit that friendship with really kicking off my cigar journey, because Frank sort of, you know, was the steward of, okay, you know, I'm going to walk you through Cuban cigars. And then he was the one that brought me into the Cuban trips, the Toronto, Montreal. And I was the only guy from Western Canada. But we would go down once or twice a year to Cuba every single year. And he was the guy that made that possible. And so, you know, without that, I wouldn't have met you. I wouldn't have met Foxy. I wouldn't have met Hamlet. And so like that one friendship kind of started that whole process for me. It's remarkable.
It's certainly the proudest thing that I've done in my cigar career so far has been putting something together that allows people to get together around the world, never meet, and whether it doesn't really matter which part of the world they're in. I love these friendship groups that have developed over time, and they're deep friendship groups, and which is highly personally rewarding. And I get to travel a fair bit just to spend time with them and to see how close they've become, and what a support structure they are for each other, which is, you know, it's a rare thing in today's world. And I often say that I don't think there's a closer. I mean, you can get a little bit like it in wine, certainly perhaps whiskey, but when it comes to real in-depth groups that share time together, that make plans together, that travel to catch up, to get together, have a cigar and have time, nothing really goes close to the cigar world in terms of, or the cigar community. And it's something we should always try to foster, always try to celebrate. And it's I mean, we had a poll in FOH many years ago now, whether to take the forum private or to keep it public. But you know, and you know, there was a certain cohort of members on the forum, and rightfully so. They said, "Look, let's." I think Frank was one. He said, "Look, let's look at making it more of a private type forum." But then again, you know, remember how you started. Remember how I started. I always take it back to there. That all these young guys coming through, This is where they learn, and it can be frustrating at times, and some of the questioning that comes through. But you know,
But
we were all there.
As they say, Rob, we were all new smokers at some point on our journey. Every single person was a new smoker at some point. And so, you know, as annoying as it can be at times, I always think back like, look, somebody had the patience to walk me through everything I needed to know. And, you know, it kind of falls on me now to sort of carry that baton and welcome those new people, because there is really a big new generation of people, and I've seen it in lounges in the States where I walk in and you know, the age differential has shifted, like I want to say 20 years now, where you, instead of the sort of 40, 50, 60 crowd, really starting to see that sort of 25 to 35 crowd. And it's great. I mean, it's great to see, because that's, you know, without that, I think the industry kind of just quietly goes away.
I agree, mate. Honestly, just coming back from the States, I went to plenty of cigar lounges, and often I was the oldest person in the room. And I'm 59, and I was the oldest person in the room, and I think that was great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, not great that I'm the oldest person in the room. No, it's not great. But yeah, no, and you're right. I think the demographic has moved. It has moved, which is cool. So you've gone from a cigar lover, you got into your cigars, and then you moved into media. You moved into your own podcast, developing Palates. How did all that come about?
So I don't know that I've ever really told this story. I've told parts of the story, but it essentially kind of is one of those things, because I've got ADHD, and as people with ADHD out there will know, you pick up hobbies, and some of them you go kind of whole hog, as they say, into those hobbies. And for me, the way it started was I was smoking so many things, and short-term memory is a real problem with ADHD. And so I really struggled. You know, I'd look back at a cigar and I go, I know I've smoked that, or I think I've smoked that, but for the life of me, I can't remember anything about that experience. And I don't know if someone suggested it to me, but I literally started journaling as I went. And I write my notes down, blah, 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 blah. And just randomly, one of the people I was hanging out with from our cigars and our weekly Google Hangout, which, yeah, I think is completely defunct now, but they said, you know what, you should start posting your reviews. And I said, listen, no one wants to hear what I have to say about cigars. This is just notes for me. And he goes, no, I really think you've got something there. And I said, okay, you know what, I'll post them on the forum. Everyone can make fun of it, and it'll just be a thing. And I started posting them, you know, once every week, once every couple of weeks, and got a lot of positive feedback. And I said, well, this is kind of interesting. I wasn't expecting this. And so another member of the forum, who is also a personal friend of mine, said, you should start your own website. And I said, no, man. No way. Like, I'm an IT guy. I know what is involved in the upkeep of a website, you know, making it accessible, constantly patching it. No interest. And he said, I will run the website if you bring the content. And so I said, okay, you're on. And that is how my first website started. And a lot of people don't even know it. It's Epic. It was Epic Ash in 2012. And Epic Ash, yeah. Silly name looking back. I mean, what a terrible name. But you know, I just kind of posted my content to some of the local cigar forums in Canada, and eventually ran afoul of the moderators, which is unfortunate. And then posted it to our cigars. And, you know, I did that for about 8-9 months, and I was pretty happy. I mean, it was a good sort of outlet for creativity and keeping my notes. And eventually the person who was running the website said, you know what, I can't run the website anymore. I've got too much going on. And I said, okay, that's fine. We'll just shut it down. No big deal. And it was right about that time where Logan Lawler from Cigar Federation just happened to reach out to me and said, hey, I've seen your reviews. have you ever given any thought to coming over to Cigar Federation? And I said, well, as luck would occur, I'm literally in the process of shutting the website down in the next couple of weeks. Sure, I'd be happy to. And so I went over to Cigar Federation, which at the time was like the second largest sort of media site out there. I think Half Wheel was still number one at that time. Cigar Authority, I think, had the number one podcast. But Cigar Federation ended up being the sort of number two page count page. And I think number two for podcasts because the numbers were just ridiculous. So again, you talk about sort of happenstance. If Logan wouldn't have reached out, that would have been the end of kind of where my journey was for media. But he brought me into Cigar Federation, and all of a sudden, all these doors open where I'm going to trade shows, I'm flying down to Nicaragua, I'm visiting factories, and I'm already kind of doing the Cuba thing as well. And, you know, I did that for, 5 years. So it's, I mean, it seems like longer than that now that I think back. And Cigar Federation kind of ran its course as websites do. And
so what year was that? What period are we talking about then? So we're talking about what, 2014, 15?
So it would have been just kind of the end of 2012 is when I joined. And then it just sort of, let's say did an Irish exit, but I sort of planned my exit for the end of 2017, beginning of 2018, because Aaron Loomis at Developing Palates, who, you know, I'd grown to know over the years, going to trade shows and hanging out, he said, look, I really like what you do. I really appreciate your take on things. You're exactly kind of what we need to sort of round out our people here. I would like you to come over to Developing Palates. And I said, well, the only way I'm going to do that is if I can hand off my duties here at Cigar Federation. I don't want to just sort of jump ship because it's a very small, I mean, you think about the cigar industry is small. Cigar media is a microcosm of the industry. I mean, it's a handful of people, and I'm certainly not in the space to sort of burn bridges. Not my style. So I handed it over to Trip Waldrop, and I said, yeah, I'm going over to Developing Palates, and been there since 2018. So, yeah.
Mate, what happened to Cigar Federation?
Well, the short version is that Logan sold the site because the original owners of Cigar Federation were running a store, so they were doing online cigar sales, and they wanted the website back because the website essentially created this instant, call it customer base. So they wanted the website back because that, you know, and instantly gave them, I don't know how many members it was. It was in the tens of thousands though, to sell cigars to. And so Logan said, okay, well, you know, Logan kind of ran the course for him. And so he sold the website back to them. And I think it's, again, one of those things where the sort of reality of running that website, it's a lot of work, especially a website that's that busy and that complicated. Eventually they just kind of, they just shut it down. I think it closed, Trip would know better than I would, but I think kind of end of 2019, maybe 2020, which is a shame because it was a great, the group there was so tight. Many of the people went on trips together, got together on a regular basis, carried on the tradition of hangouts. I still actually am friends with quite a number of people that were original members of Cigar Federation, but these things run their courses, and you know,
they do.
Yeah.
It was an interesting time. I used to get at least 1 or 2 emails a week saying you want to sell your website back in those
days.
Right. Yeah, it was a big thing. They just wanted they wanted traffic, and some people wanted to buy the carts, and of course, I said, well, unless you have Cuban cigars, you've got no chance at all. Anyway, I never had any intention of selling the website, but I used to put out a figure of 5 million, and that normally stopped all emails. That always stopped all emails. But I thought you only need one, as they say, mate, you only need one wood duck to come through. But anyway, long time ago.
Cigar
Federation. Yeah, I remember that.
And I started, I sort of, a lot, I'm going to say this because I don't really talk about this much, but I want to talk about it because I feel like some of this history is being lost over time. I actually started the first pairing show for Cigar Media, and that was back in 2013 because I like spirits and I like beer and I like alcohol and I like pairing with cigars, and I looked around for any sort of website or any sort of podcast that focused on pairing, and there was the occasional article on Cigar Aficionado. There was obviously articles on FOH all the time. What's your favorite pairing? What's your, people would talk about all the time, but there wasn't any sort of show dedicated to pairing. And I just said, okay, well, I'm terrible at podcasts, but I'll just jump both feet in. And of course, the first 10 episodes are pretty painful. I wouldn't recommend them, but I think Rob Rasmussen, who is my co-host, we kind of found our footing, and you did like, 160 episodes before I kind of passed the torch on. So sometimes freezing my tail off in the outdoor elements, but it was a lot of fun.
You're drinking some Teeling whiskey at the moment, yeah, which I think is, Rob Fox introduced me to Teeling, and I think it's a fantastic drop. It really is.
It's brilliant.
I mean, they make so many whiskeys, Teeling, but it's so approachable. I think I said before, dangerously approachable.
Yeah.
To get through. I'm on a dry spell, folks, at the moment. My 5 weeks away has required me to go on an 8-week sabbatical, I think, before I head back overseas. So I'm on a virgin mojito today, which is, the only thing it's missing is rum, and lots of it. But anyway, I'll live there. So developing palates. Tell me about tell the forum about developing palates, which is your current. Well, one or two. You're involved in 2 at this point in time, aren't you? In 2 podcasts.
Well, so it seems like I am, because these days I feel like I do as many guest spots as I do regular spots on developing palates. Again, incestuous is probably the wrong term, but it's a very tight-knit group of media people. And so I've tried, I'm Canadian, we're friendly people. I've always tried to carry on a very good relationship with everyone in the industry. And so I think through that time, I've made friends with other media brands, and I've made it clear to them, look, if you guys are ever in a hot situation where a co-host is sick, or, look, life gets in the way, if you need somebody on short notice, I'm more than happy to pinch hit, jump in, and it has served me well, because I've been called into, like 10 different shows over the even the last 6 months. It's been very busy for me. Just people have life, and life crops up, and so they need a co-host. I'm happy to hop in, but developing palates, really the focus for developing palates is just cigar reviews. We don't run any cigar shows, although it kind of seems like we do, because Aaron does guest host. He's the co-host of Prime Time with Cigar Coop. And so I think that's kind of where that cross-pollination, sometimes people see us as one entity, but we call it the sort of media collaboration, or the greater Coop collaborative group, because he's sort of created this circus is maybe not the right word, but his entourage of different media brands now, where he's got Let's Get Pairing, and he's got Cigar Jukebox, and he's got Prime Time, he's got Bear's Show, El Oso Fumar, and they're sort of all different brand extensions of the sort of,
I'm exhausted just listening to that.
I know. So so I do cigar. Really, the core of what I do is I write up smoke cigars, write reviews, and then we do our succinct and occasionally highly entertaining video recaps of the 4 guys on the panel, and hopefully inform and entertain.
I'll put a link to your shows at the bottom of this feed. People can go and check them out themselves. You've been in and around the industry now for the best part of seriously part of 10 years, a decade. Yeah.
Yeah.
In and around. You've traveled, you've been to Nicaragua, you've done Honduras. I think you've done Honduras.
I missed Honduras. I had an opportunity when I was legitimately in the industry, working in the industry. I had an opportunity to go down for a tour of Rocky Patel's facility, which would have been an excellent tour, I hear. But I think that was, if I remember right, that was the year, that was the uncomfortable year where I had my now wife had a conversation with me, and she said, "Do you know how many cigar trips that you've taken this year?" And that's never where you want the conversation to sort of begin, because you kind of already know you're in hot water.
Yeah. No,
and so
that's dead set right. The minute your wife, assuming she's not involved in the cigar industry, so D, I'm not talking about you, but the minute your wife starts talking about cigars and your cigar journey, it's never really a good conversation in my experience at all. So you've been around for a decade. You've traveled. You've done all the trade shows. Can I ask you, what's one of the biggest trends that you've seen during that period of time? We'll start with NC cigars, non-Cuban cigars. What's the biggest trend that you've seen?
I mean, the biggest one that I think stands out is this sort of trend towards larger ring gauges. That's been, I would say, that's parallel Cuban and non-Cuban industry. The way we sort of started 10, 12 years ago, a lot of the non-Cuban industry was always sort of Robusto was really a number one selling. I think it's always been the number one selling. And I want to say number two was likely, at one point, it must have been a Corona Extra or Lonsdale, and the number three was a Toro. And then Churchill was, the least popular selling brand. But over time, that's really become, I want to say Gordo is almost number one seller now across retailers. And so it's changed the content a little bit in terms of what we review for sizes. But I would say Toro or Gordo tends to be the number one seller, and Robusto is a number two or number three seller. So that's sort of happened. This sort of size creep has really started to happen in the last 6 to 7 years, and it's just been sort of incremental. It started small, no pun intended, and 5 years ago is when we started to see it kind of get ridiculous from my take. You sort of see the almost enormous sizes of 100 ring gauge cigars, 100 by 100 ring gauge by 10 inches, or 80 ring gauge by 7 inch. And it stuns me to this day every time I see it on the shelf, and I think there's no way that cigar could possibly sell. And they sell without any issue.
They fly. It blows me away. But I have plenty of guys who own cigar shops in the US, cigar divans in the US, and I ask them the question. I mean, who buys that? And they go, "Rob, we can't get enough. We just can't get enough."
Yep.
If I put a 60 ring gauge, say 65, 70 ring gauge in my divan here in Brisbane, the guys who walk in would just throw it at me. They'd be absolutely appalled. But then again, it's a big church.
Yep.
Cigars are a big church. From a blending perspective, I have no idea how you can pull off, a 60 plus ring gauge cigar. I have no idea how you can pull it off
tricky.
and make it enjoyable and make it a journey. I mean, you're packing it full of Volado and Viso, I suppose. I don't know how you keep that to a price point. How you keep it to a flavor point that's acceptable, let alone a price point. Well, you'd have to put a lot of crap tobacco in to make it work. But then again, they know their game better than I do. So that's one trend, the drift towards larger ring gauge cigars. I think we've seen that certainly in the Cuban realm as well. When you
I think
started,
the other trend, Rob, was probably
sorry.
Good. I was going to say the other trend. I think the big one was I would call the sort of early 2010s the golden age of the sort of boutique movement in the non-Cuban industry. Everyone and their dog was sort of getting into the industry at that time, and that was sort of, I'd say, between 2010 and 2013 was sort of the peak of new entrants into the industry, because at the time, the joke was all you need is $10,000 and a passport, and anybody can be a cigar owner in the non-Cuban industry. But what they didn't tell people was that if you want to be successful in the non-Cuban industry, it takes a lot more than $10,000 and a passport. So I can remember vividly being at the trade show like in 2013 and seeing 25 new brand entrants and thinking 24 of these 25 are not going to be around next year, because they just don't realize how much time and money and energy it takes to build a brand from nothing. And I think we've sort of stabilized a little bit. I think with the FDA getting punched in the nose a little bit, we saw a period of time where there was no entrance whatsoever in the really zero boutique companies. And so I would say over the last 3 years, we've seen sort of jump up again, where I go to the trade show and I see 5 new companies, which currently seems like a lot. I mean, that's a lot of new companies in a very, very competitive market space.
Oh, it is. It's booming again, but I think it goes in cycles. Yeah. So
For sure.
you're talking 2014, you saw that boom of new entrants, and now we're seeing a boom in new entrants now in 2024. That's 10 years. So I'm going to take you 10 years prior to 2014. So not quite, but yeah, that 1995, 96, 97 period where we had
the boom period.
The boom period there, and there was some great NC cigars coming through.
Yeah.
I remember, well, you had the great La Gloria Cabana Wavell Maduros, which were being produced at that time. You had Tony Borhani brought out.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Tony, bringing something out of the woodwork there. Tony Borhani about some brilliant cigars that I really fell in love with. But the problem was, and I think you hit upon it, is resources. And resources, not just capital, resources is also access to tobacco. And the problem is when you get really super popular, you have two decisions. You have a decision to make. Do you go into massive production, or do you maintain quality and blend integrity?
Yep.
And I think Tony lasted 4 years, and I know who owned La Gloria Cabana Wavell Maduro. I think it was Ernesto. I can't remember now.
I don't remember.
Yeah, so both of them got into trouble in terms of the quality just plummeted about 1998, 1999. If I remember correctly, my timelines, the quality plummeted, and Tony disappeared, and La Gloria's got swallowed up by another firm. He sold out. He's still working today. It was just you've got to be very, very careful as to you need to have great supply and ongoing supply of tobacco. Otherwise, you're in a world of hurt, especially if you're relying on other factories, especially if you're buying tobacco in. And it's all of a sudden you're making 250,000 sticks a year, and you're a small but very profitable little firm, and then you try to go to 1.5 million sticks. Then what do you do? What do you do there? Well, most of the guys take the money, but you are a shooting star at that point, and there's only one trajectory, and that's straight down. But you see it time and time again. I'm really interested to see how this modern crop of new entrants go. And
Yeah.
I know they're exceptionally hard to get into the European market and the Asian market as well.
Yep.
And I think that's certainly an opportunity that wasn't there in 2014 for many of them, or certainly not in 2008, 2005, sorry, 1995 to 2000, because really most people in Asia, most people in Europe couldn't give a rat's backside about non-Cuban cigars. They just had Cuban cigars, and that's fine. So I'm really interested to see where this modern cohort go. But I love their marketing. I love their packaging. I think we had a discussion the other day about how professional some of these brands are, and these manufacturers are. Drew Estate, I think you were saying the other day, we're just doing a tasting session the other day, guys, with John and George, and it was the Drew Estate. I mean, absolutely killing it in Asia at the moment. Oliva killing it in Asia, but these are super professional operations.
Yeah.
And I think you saw that firsthand when you went and visited. Was it Drew Estate's operation?
Yeah, so I don't think I've actually visited a factory operation more than, well, actually that's not true. I've been to Hoya de Nicaragua more than Drew Estate, but Drew Estate's number two, and then I've actually had the opportunity to sit in their offices because I know again, small industry, so I've gotten to know quite a number of people that work there, and got invited down to the office and just hanging out and smoking cigars and just sort of watching business take place. And it was sort of it kind of reminds me of what I think the sort of Apple, Google ecosphere must be, with all these very creative people, and in this case, cigar people, just sitting around smoking cigars, working hard, and then they call a scrum and they say, hey, let's talk about this project that's 18 months, 24 months, 36 months down the road, and let's hash it out and let's sort of chip away at it. And that's how they operate. They're never thinking short term. They're always thinking 12 months plus. And that's obviously done them a lot of great service, because they've been able to dodge a number of tobacco shortages. They've been able to dodge a number of issues in the industry with FDA. And, they were certainly among the forefront of the people that said, hey, there's this huge market emerging in Europe. I think they were certainly among the first people who were in Dortmund doing, showing off their product and saying, this is going to be the next big growth market for us. And they were right. I mean, and that was, that's 10 years ago, 11 years ago now.
There's certainly harvesting the benefit of that hard work put in a decade ago. And there's no shortcuts for any of these guys. They really need to put the hard work in to get it done. But I tip my hat to all of them, those who've actually put the hard work in, and those who are succeeding, especially in the Asian market, which is the market that I'm far more familiar with. Is I've just come back from Hong Kong, and to see the divans there and the stores and the divans, which are, a good, some of them are 60-65% non-Cuban cigars. And really,
I never thought I'd see the day, Rob. Honestly, if we had this conversation 6 years ago, I'd say, look, in Canada, sure. Maybe in Germany, okay. But in Asia, no chance, zero chance. The appetite for Cubans is just so great. 15%, 20% should be your high watermark. And I would have been totally off my rocker. They have shown that they confound all the people that think, they know what the Asian market is. Well, guess what? They love non-Cuban brands.
They do, and they're out there. They've got an appetite to try new things, and recent appetite. But I think it's such a huge market, and it's. I do have a giggle when, again, we talk about preparation. And this goes for larger guys as well, where decent distributors in Asia will say, yeah, okay, we want to take your brand on. So here's an order for 500,000 US or $1 million US. And where can we get them?
Yeah.
And they say, well, about 6 months.
Yeah.
It's there is no huge stockpile of cigars which are ready to go anywhere.
There's no secret warehouse. There's no Indiana Jones stockpile sitting in Esteli where they're just waiting for the moment. What gets rolled goes out and gets sold. And if they open up a new market, that comes with a fair amount of consideration of where do we get that production from? Because you don't have rollers just sitting around waiting for production. Everything is sort of FIFO. Like FIFO is how the industry operates. Tobacco is probably the only exception. If you really know what you're doing, you make sure that you have a 3 to 4 year stockpile. But in terms of actually what's being created, you're not creating cigars to sit on the shelf, because that would be the death knell of your operation.
Yeah, that's true. We're going through that at this point in time. With we're very lucky. We've got our Oscar Valaderas factory in Honduras, and we've got our Fabrica 5 unit, which is part of that. But if tobacco is not ready to go, and we got more than enough filler tobacco, etc., to last us years, but the reality is that we had to wait on our wrapper tobacco because it just wasn't quite ready yet.
Yeah.
So then we waited 3 months.
You can't rush. The sad thing is there's shortcuts, but there's really no real shortcuts when it comes to producing quality tobacco. And that's the unfortunate thing, is that you constantly have to be thinking 6 month, 9 month, 12 month, 18 month, 24 months out. And a lot of times you're making best guesses as to where that is going to be. And these best guesses come with a very large dollar value attached to them, and someone is paying those bills. So
yeah. It's not easy. I put up some photos the other day of I think it's on the forum, your factory, your Fabrica, today, and that's from last Thursday. And you'll see guys there, Sergio, Nahun, etc., going around and checking the pilons to see if they're ready. And if they're not ready, then we just cover them over again and walk away. That's all you can do. The worst thing you can do is, we've currently, I think we'll roll just on 600,000 cigars over the next 8 months for ourselves.
Which is a lot. I mean, that's a lot of cigars. People don't realize 600,000 is a lot.
A lot of cigars, but we're 3 months behind our projections, the production projections, because we're just waiting on the wrapper to be correct, to be ready. And so, we got guys saying, when are the Churchills ready? Because I think we've run out of. We didn't expect Churchills to be so popular on
it is
very good Churchills, but you didn't expect it to be popular.
Listen, again, back to what we're talking about. In the US market, Churchill is the second worst selling size. The worst selling size is Lancero. So if you'd asked me, what size should we make, I would have said, well, for goodness sake, don't make a Churchill initially, and don't make a Lancero. And again, I'd have egg all on my face because you've sold out of Churchills. So shows what I know.
Churchills, Lanceros are immensely popular. I mean, who else does a Carlotta? We do a Carlotta.
Right.
Why? Because we could. I think that was a middle finger to Habanos more than anything else. Because I love that Partiga series to Connoisseur number 3 so much. I wanted to replicate.
Brilliant size.
I can smoke. But anyway, it's not about us. The most frustrating thing that you've seen in the industry, or you see it in the industry today, the most frustrating thing. What would that be?
So much like the Cuban industry, there is a lot of BS that's the friendly term, that cow dung that you have to sift through. And it's unfortunate because I think at this time and place, there's so much information that's available now to people so many resources available for people to find out information and really educate themselves. And there are a lot of really good brand owners out there that are very transparent about tobacco and industry operations costs. They're very transparent, but unfortunately, there's still this sort of group that are not, and that's unfortunate because I hate to see it. I always chuckle when, as a media person who certainly done their time, I've literally had the conversation with a manufacturer where they're telling me something, and I sort of look at them straight in the eye and I say, don't talk to me like I'm other people, because I'm not other people. You know that that's not true. I know that that's not true. Let's save the sort of marketing spiel for the internet, because that's just nonsense. Like, if we're gonna have a conversation, let's have an honest and open conversation. I don't want to hear this sort of spin. I'm well beyond that at this point. And there's been a sort of revitalization of that in the last couple of years, I think, with some of the online retailers where they're sort of bringing some of that back. And I hate to see that, because I think it does a disservice to new cigar smokers in the non-Cuban industry who sort of get attached to those brands. And you can kind of watch their journey as they sort of spend 6 months to a year, and then they sort of catch wise. They do some online research, they participate in the forums, and they realize eventually, they go, that's not true. What they're telling me is not true. And unfortunately, what ends up happening is they see you as dishonest, and they sort of fall out of love with your brand, and they sort of go on to another brand and sort of wave at you in the rearview mirror. And it doesn't have to happen. I mean, you can have marketing spin with honesty, and I would like to see a lot more of that in the industry. It happens at the tobacco level, it happens at the sales level, it happens at the sort of marketing internet level. I certainly could do without that whole thing. Cuban industry as well.
Oh, Cuban industry, Jesus. um, the place where you get the least information is a Habanos event. That's the place you get the least information from it. I'm old school, yeah. So I'm very much old school. So I get most of my information. If I take someone to lunch, I get most of my information between 4 and 6 p.m. If I take someone to dinner, I get most of my information about midnight to 2 a.m.
Right.
And that information is, I can guarantee you, it's a 180-degree U-turn from what they were telling the press conference the day before.
Yeah.
You understand the issues, you understand the problems, you understand the challenges, all that comes out. God, alcohol is a beautiful thing. I understand it, and I appreciate it. I appreciate the challenges that they have, but I just wish, for God's sake, can you just be a little, I mean, I think people respect, hey, we've got a few challenges this year. These are where our challenges are. We've got a great team. We're going to get through this. And I want to thank you. I want to thank all our supporters out there, all the people who love our cigars. And we have a complete commitment to you as a consumer. And just on behalf of whatever brand, or even Habanos, imagine Habanos saying that, crikey. Thank you. And we know you guys are going through some struggles at the moment as our loyal consumers over many, many years. And we're going to try to produce some things which actually meet each one of those markets that have supported us over all this time. Well, no, you don't get any of that. No. It just doesn't exist. But that's fine. In the end, they are who they are. But that's been, I think, communication is certainly one of the biggest frustrations that I see in the industry. Just gilding the lily.
Yes, gilding the lily.
Gilding the lily. Yeah. I mean, come on. There is. I think you can have a little bit of marketing spin, but let's put it with a lot of honesty in terms of the brand that's heading, where the issues are, and getting input from your customer base, from your distributor base into what you're going to be doing in terms of production, in terms of what the market wants. Why is this product out? There are some great stories in this industry. They're a
Oh yeah.
fantastic, and I think we should be celebrating them more and more. I think we were talking about it the other day, John, that I would love, my biggest frustration is, and this is not about me, this show, but my biggest frustration at the moment is influencers. And I
Right.
think, honestly.
So yeah, and I've seen some of them come and go, and I've seen some good influencers, some authentic, positive influencers, and I've sort of tried to, as this sort of grizzled now second wave media guy, I've sort of tried to steward them and say, look, I love what you're doing. Just continue to do what you're doing. Continue to be authentic. Authenticity will always translate and always be more successful than a BS persona. And I've seen some some people who were and I can think of specifically one person back in 2020. She was brand new in that sphere, and she sort of told me what she was planning, and I said, you know what, that's great. What your strategy is, what your plan is great. You're authentic, you're honest, you're not trying to present something that you aren't, you're not trying to be more knowledgeable than you are. And I've sort of watched her brand grow over the last 3-4 years, and she's slowly turning into a bit of a influencer juggernaut. And good for her, because I love to see that. I love to see someone who's authentic.
What's her name? Let's give her a plug. What's her name?
So that's Cigars with Michelle. She's on Instagram. She's a lovely lady. She goes out of her way to seek me out at the trade show, give me a hug, ask how I'm doing. She checks in throughout. She's way better at this than I am. She checks in throughout the year. How are you doing? What's new with you? And she just routinely puts in educational content, cigar content that's authentic, and there's no BS. There's no layers of influencer spin to it. I love it. It's wonderful.
I love that. Anything that's educational, that adds value, is key. And you can be as flamboyant as you want, and there are plenty of flamboyants and curbs. You're doing a great job out there, and keep it going. And there are others who have their own style.
Yep.
And deliver it well. It may not be my style or your style or other people's style, and that's fine. As I said, we're a broad church. I get pissed when, I think everyone gets to that point where you start doing content for the sake of doing content's sake.
Right.
Because you need to produce something every Wednesday.
Yep.
And Friday. And you know what? That makes it 700 pieces a year plus.
Yeah.
And it just turns into dribble.
Yeah.
It just turns into dribble. But this whole new online eco space of influencers is not my world. And the last thing I'd want to produce is something that is just that I don't want to listen to or watch.
Yep.
But yeah, I look for new product. I look for new content each day, because it's my industry. And
yep.
Yeah, I think the direction that we're heading at this point in terms of content is bloody shallow. It is super shallow. So that'd be outside of Habanos, my biggest gripe in the industry today. But we're not here to bat. We'll get someone from Habanos on one of these programs. But no, we won't. Because I'll lose my license.
Yep. Yeah. So yeah, that's exactly what would happen.
We won't do that. Yeah, I know. So I'm going to ask you questions in terms of a newcomer, say someone there in the mid-20s, say you coming back into this industry. If you had to give a newcomer into this cigar loving ecosystem, what would be I'm going to give you 5 non-Cuban cigars that you get them to try, to give them and say, these are the 5 cigars I would want you to try in the non-Cuban realm.
Well, I'm probably going to just go with our top 25. Well, essentially the top five, almost literally the top five of our 2023 top cigars, because we've sort of, I don't want to say sifted through, but we've sort of done the hard work where we've smoked hundreds of cigars to sort of find the bells of the ball through the year. And the intention really is to say, look, these are the standout cigars that I think people really need to seek out, that will impress them. Because every time I see on the forums, and it's so frustrating for me to see someone say, I've tried these three brands, they were awful, or I've smoked non-Cubans in the past and they're all pepper bombs. And every time I see that, I just sort of hang my head. I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. I hate to see that, because I know there are brilliant cigars out there, and if only they could sort of be steered towards some great ones. So for me, some of the sort of great smaller, mid-sized brands out there that are doing some really excellent stuff. HVC is a small company that most people have never heard of. Just one guy running a factory now on his own. The standout
Who's
cigar
behind that?
that's his name is Rainier Lorenzo,
Right near
and
Lorena, out of Miami, yeah?
yeah, out of Miami. So he was with so we were kind of talking about managed growth. So he was with Ag and Orsa for years and years and years. As you know, most companies, you can't just shell out millions of dollars for a factory and tobacco operations and pre-industry. It's just not realistic. Even if you have deep pocketbooks, that's a very, very tough thing to do. So typically what you start with is you go to a factory and you say, look, can I roll 50,000 cigars a year out of your factory? And eventually what happens is they come along, and sort of the conversation is, look, mate, you're putting out 500,000 cigars a year. We can't sell, we can't do that anymore. You're competing with our production now. So this relationship is sort of coming to a close, where you're going to have to either reduce the amount of production you're making, or you're going to have to kind of figure out what you're going to do. And he was very shrewd in that he had a plan, obviously well in advance. And he opened his up a new factory last year, and did a brilliant job of transitioning his production over to his factory without even missing a beat. And it's done his brand.
It's in Nicaragua, isn't it? If I remember
It is
correctly.
in Nicaragua, yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
His factory's in Esteli. So one of the standout cigars that he made last year was the HVC Seleccion No. That was just a great cigar. I don't even know what the cost is. I want to say it's quite affordable. I think they were $10 or $12, which is very affordable for the non-Cuban market. But you could pick a lot of things from his portfolio, and they're very much in that sort of light plus to medium category. Very approachable, very nuanced. They're not pepper bombs. I think people who are starting out, or kind of looking for a stable of 5-pack of non-Cuban cigars, that's a great brand to go with. I think you're going to find something in that portfolio that would suit you well.
HVC Selection No. Okay.
Yeah.
Put that as one. I've been following him for I know he's a good friend of Hamlet.
That's right.
And that's how I know Hobbies.
Yeah, because he's a Cuban guy too. They're all, I mean, half the industry, right? Cuban guys.
Wizard. Who hasn't got ties? Yeah, it's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's one. Give us another one.
Little company, but also out of Honduras, JRE Aladino. I don't know why, but this brand seems to sort of sit under the radar for a lot of people, and I don't know why, because their cigars are absurdly affordable. And by absurdly affordable, I mean most of their product is below $9, which is a great value. They're all very rich, nuanced, sophisticated cigars that even a new smoker, I think, could pick up and smoke. Last year, he did a Lancero, which was his Aladino Classic Elegante. I think it was like $9.30 or $9.60 for a Lancero. And just a wonderful, sophisticated, approachable cigar. And they just continue to put out great product. I don't know if they need some help on the marketing side of things to sort of get their visibility out there. But again, they're not a small operation. They produce a lot of cigars. They've got their own factories and then
JRE Aladino.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I'm going to put a list there underneath the video. Yeah. So give these guys a bit of a pump. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Third.
Now, this is a brand that most people probably have heard of because he's created a bit of a windfall with his personality. Steve Saka. The brand is a little mouthful. It's Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, or DTT. Everyone just says Saka because it's so much easier to remember than Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust. But he came out with a line extension on his Mi Querida series. So it's a little bit more pricey, but it was the Papasaka. And what I like about his blending strategy is that he believes in blending medium full to full bodied cigars that are medium strength. And, I think that's really a difficult thing to do in the industry because what you often see is you'll see a full strength, full bodied cigar, and that's just too much for a lot of cigar smokers, especially people who are kind of starting out or dipping their toes into the pool. So if you're kind of looking for something more in the medium full body category, so very complex, lots of layers, but very restrained in strength, Papasaka was just a wonderful, wonderful cigar. I mean, really.
How do you recall his blend? What's he using?
I think that's a broadleaf wrapper. It's either broadleaf or Mexican San Andre, but I'm pretty sure it's broadleaf. And then I think he's got a Mexican San Andre wrapper. The funny thing about Steve, so we're talking about transparency. He's a guy who doesn't shy away from any transparency. He'll literally tell you, and we roll our eyes every time we see it, but he'll give you every single leaf that goes into that cigar. He'll tell you every leaf of Seco, every leaf of Viso, every leaf of Ligero, where it comes from, exactly what the grade and type of tobacco for the wrapper is, exactly what grade and type of tobacco for the binder, because he says nobody's going to take that blend and recreate it. It's just not possible. I can't give you the tobaccos and you just recreate it. It's more complex than that. So he doesn't care.
Yeah. I was going to say, Steve's on my list. Yeah, there's a short list that I have of guys that I haven't met and I would love to have a long lunch with. And
that'd be a long lunch.
Yeah, my long lunch list.
Long lunch.
Yeah, that's great. Number 4. So Papasaka's number 3 from Steve. Dunbarton, which I think is a great name. Dunbarton.
Yeah, doesn't have cigar in the name.
Yeah,
right. Sounds like a bank.
Yeah. Welcome, Steve. Welcome, Dunbarton Trust. Sounds a bit like Bon Roberts. So we've got the same marketing strategy. In terms of number 4.
So this is a brand that I think flies under the radar for a lot of people. They operate out of Austin, Texas. Their factory, they have their own factory and pre-industry in Esteli. RoMa Craft Tobacco, and they just RoMa Craft. So they're very well known for making sort of strong cigars. I think is probably a very fair thing to say. A lot of people know their cigars for being very full body, very full strength, and that's totally true. But they make a line of cigars called Intemperance that are anything but strong in terms of nicotine strength. And the Intemperance line in general is very, very approachable. In fact, I run into people all the time who are Cuban cigar smokers, and they say they picked up an Intemperance and they loved it. So it's last year they came out with a line extension because of very complicated but tobacco issues. They had to sort of pivot. And so they came out with their Volstead, which is a, gosh, now I'm going to get the wrapper wrong. I want to say it's Sumatra wrapper. I'm going to feel silly if I've got that wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's Sumatra wrapper. At any rate, it's just a wonderful medium-bodied, medium plus, just over medium strength, pardon me, I got that backwards. It's medium strength and just over medium-bodied cigar, but just wonderful layers of complexity. And they have like 6 different sizes. So if you're kind of, you want that bigger ring gauge cigar, they actually smoke very, very well in a larger ring gauge, but he's got short formats, like little 4.5-inch cigars. He's got, bigger cigars at 6-inch, 5-inch. So they all smoke wonderful. He does blend them to the size format. And again, profile wise, I think only one of the series is over $10. I think they're all around exactly $10. I think the largest one is $10.50 or $10.75. So,
So
great cigar.
RoMa Craft, Intemperance.
Yeah, it's the Intemperance Volstead.
Okay, Volstead. All right, I'll do a bit of research and put that up. Volstead, and that takes us to your number 5.
Now, I'd be remiss in not mentioning this company because I've watched them grow over the last 10 years. Talk about sort of being in the industry and watching new entrants. So I watched them start their company. I watched them grow their company. And this is James and Angela Brown of Black Label Trading Company. I've seen them move their factory in Esteli to a new location, a bigger location. So last year they came out with just a beautiful Corona Larga, which, I love the size. He's a bit of a traditionalist. He likes traditional sizes, traditional formats. He doesn't like big ring gauge stuff. He blends to the smaller sizes. So this is from their S&R series.
Okay.
And it's a barber pole. And I think barber poles kind of have gotten a bad rap because barber poles have always sort of been looked at as sort of a gimmicky thing. And I think in some cases they are gimmicky, but he definitely blends these cigars. He's got some really interesting things. The Killer Bee and the Hornet series, which uses candela on the foot or on the cap. And it's not a gimmick. It adds a little bit of that candela sort of grassy funk to balance out the sweetness of the tobacco. But the S&R Corona Larga last year, I think, was just a really, really great size, great format. His black work stuff tends to be a lot more full strength, full bodied, but they do have a whole range of cigars in the sort of medium strength, medium bodied, even light plus strength bodied category. So they are out there.
Very good. Thank you for that. Again, we'll put that list down under this video so people can find them out. And again, just order a 5-pack of each, guys. You can find them online and give them a try. It's all good. So, in terms of NC tobacco, non-Cuban tobacco, what do you sort of? I mean, you smoke everything, but what tends to gravitate with you or capture your heart more than another? Is it Nicaraguan? Is it Dominican? Do you have a preference?
I think that as much as I try to be as objective as possible, I definitely have a preference. And I think as I look at our scores over the years, it's pretty clear that I tend to gravitate more towards Nicaraguan cigars. And I don't think that is completely subjective. I think I've come to that, over smoking tens of thousands of cigars for review. I just tend to find that Dominican cigars, for the most part, and I'm probably going to get into trouble for this, but Dominican cigars, for the most part, they tend to be blended very similar. That is, there's not a lot of Dominican cigars. There are Dominican cigar companies out there, but there aren't a ton of Dominican cigar companies out there that are radically trying to create blends or styles of blending that are very, very different from other Dominican cigars. There are companies out there like Aventura is a great example of a company. He blends cigars that you wouldn't even be able to put as Dominican because he blends very differently from the sort of typical Dominican cigar. But in general, I would say I probably pivot 60% towards Nicaraguan origin cigars, which is, that's a mixed bag because you say Nicaraguan origin, but, even with the RoMa Craft, you look at that blend, I mean, it's an Ecuadorian wrapper with a Mexican binder and fillers from the Dominican and fillers from Nicaragua. So it's a multinational blend. It just happens to be rolled out of Esteli, Nicaragua. You could probably reproduce that cigar in the Dominican, but it just happens to come out with Nicaragua. And yeah,
Fair enough.
in fact, now that I look at that list, I guess, talking about bias, so HVC, Nicaraguan. Dunbarton Tobacco and Trust, Nicaraguan. RoMa Craft, Nicaraguan. Blackworks, Black Label, that's Nicaraguan. The only one that's on that list that is not Nicaraguan is GRE, which is Honduran. So I guess that kind of speaks for itself. But there are definitely some brilliant Dominican cigar companies out there for sure.
We touched on price before, and you basically taste cigars, if not for a living, but certainly for a passion. Yeah. Your experience in price point and utility in terms of satisfaction, because you're seeing, I'm seeing, we're all seeing a ton of $30, $40, $50, $60 plus non-Cuban cigars plus come onto the market. $100 cigars come onto the market. Where are you seeing from a taste perspective, from a value, start from a taste perspective, from a scoring perspective, when you score your cigars and your team scores their cigars, how are you seeing that interplay between price and quality satisfaction?
So one of the things that Aaron does, and I really, really like that we do it, it confounds a lot of people, but it seems very straightforward, is once we're done scoring a cigar, and we don't score on price. So the price of a cigar doesn't factor into the scoring at all. So if it's a $60 cigar, it's treated exactly the same as if it was a $7 cigar. Score lands where it lands. But what we do at the bottom of the review is we put what's called a price per point value. So the easy way to think of that is if you have a 7-point cigar, so it's scored 7 points out of 10, there's a value of how much does each of those points cost you when you're paying for that cigar. So, talking about all things being equal, if you have a $7.9 cigar versus a $7.30 cigar, well, it's a lot better value to get a $9 cigar for 7 points than a $30 cigar for 9 points. And that's not us sort of judging. We're just saying, look, this is what it scored. This is what it costs. This is what that value for us in terms of how it's scored is going to cost you. And it's a pretty simple mathematical equation. You're just dividing the score by the cost of the cigar to get cost per point.
Makes sense.
So
yeah.
With that said,
we're getting into the meat. We're getting the meat potatoes now.
So
what's the outcome?
So with that said, it is my, I think, fairly considered experience at this point to say I do not see a relationship between the price of a cigar and how good that cigar is. There is no relationship that I can tell whatsoever. In fact, I would say the two things seem completely disconnected, in the sense that you can have a $30 cigar that's a dud, and you can have an $8 cigar that's a dud. So I'm always obviously looking for, because I'm a thrifty guy, I'm Scottish heritage, so I like to rub the two pennies together and get a good deal. So listen, if I can get the $10 cigar that's a 7-point rating, I'd rather have 3 of those versus the one $30 cigar. But that's not going to be the math for everybody. Everyone's going to associate with a brand differently. But that's kind of the value, that's how I approach the value proposition personally when I'm buying cigars. But I just don't see, with my considered amount of reviews and my data experience professionally, there seems to be no relationship whatsoever between, if I just spend $25, am I guaranteed to get a great cigar? And the answer to that is no. You're no more likely to get a great cigar at $25 than you are at $9. Unfortunately, you kind of just have to work through it to find those gems, because there's no secret math, there's no secret trick to sort of navigating that very complex and busy space of non-Cuban cigars, to just say, okay, well, just how can I pick out the good ones? I wish I could tell you what that math was. There doesn't seem to be any magic formula to figure that out, unfortunately.
Okay, so having said that, if I was to give you $100,
Yes.
go buy one or two cigars that are, say that, or three that cost more than, let's say, more than 40 at a retail level. Which are the couple? You can spend up to $100 on a cigar or two at 45 or whatever you want to call it. Where, if you had to do it, which are the ones that you've tasted at that super premium level? Let's call it a super premium level.
Mm-hmm.
That you would actually spend that coin on.
At the risk of alienating some of the brands that play in that space, I think I can reasonably say that there are three companies that are very consistent in that space, and everyone knows them: Arturo Fuente, Padron, and Davidoff. They have decades and decades and decades of experience in that space. I think that for the most part, the sort of Dominican versus Nicaraguan aside, I think that if you gravitate towards sophisticated, good cigars and you're looking to spend a little bit more money, you'd be hard pressed to spend money with those three companies and come away disappointed.
Yeah, I tend to agree. Tend to agree on that. Out of interest sake, what is your favorite Vitola?
I'm a traditionalist, Rob. I'm a long and skinny guy. I'm going to be a long and skinny guy till the day I die. I know Coop and I go back and forth. We battle about this all the time. Coop keeps telling me, he says, listen, Gordos are Vitolas too. And I say, yeah, mate, they're good. They're Vitolas too. They're just not good Vitolas. So we go back and forth constantly. I'm kind of a Lonsdale Lancero Corona Extra Corona guy. I think it's kind of like judging Cuban restaurants. I'm judging a Cuban restaurants by their flan, and I'm judging a factory based on how well can you make a Corona Extra or a Corona or a Lonsdale. If you can make a lights out Lonsdale, to me that means you really have a handle on rolling. You have a really good handle on blending, because they are difficult sizes to roll, especially consistently. Lancero is kind of a side because they're kind of a very difficult beast. But if you can make a great Lonsdale or a great Corona Extra, that's right in my wheelhouse. A good smoking time. Obviously, I smoke very slowly, but those are great sizes for me. You're kind of a traditionalist too, right? You like the long and skinnies, obviously.
Yeah, I do. When we're blending, we normally start blending with a Corona.
Yeah,
and it's, to me, I grew up on it. I grew up on those sizes. This 44 gauge here to me is gorgeous. It's perfect. It works well.
This is smoking so wonderful. Yeah.
It just works. It works for me. You love your Cuban cigars.
I do.
Let the boys, the team know out there, the members know. What do you gravitate towards in Cuban cigars?
Well, historically at the top of the list, and this is unachievable for everybody now, but at the top of the sort of Mount Everest of Cuban cigars for me was the La Excepción Selectios Finos Edition Limitada 2011 from Italy. To date, that's kind of my, I've still got a box. I slowly work my way through that. That's kind of the Mount Everest for me of cigars. I love that cigar. It's just a brilliant cigar. But that's sort of aside. I'm kind of all over the place on sizes. The H. Upmann Sir Winston, the Sir Winnie. I love that cigar. It's just a great format. Unfortunately, I get darn near 3 hours and 40 minutes smoking time. So it's not something I'm lighting up on a regular basis, but that's a brilliant cigar. we kind of talked about it at the top of the hour, or bottom of the hour, I should say, the Trinidad Fundadores. I was all in on Trinidad from the very start. Fundadores, I've got several boxes. Again, slowly working through. I love Trinidad as a marca as a whole. I just think it's a great, great marca. Fundadores is, look, it's a Lancero. It's a brilliant Lancero. Love it. Partagas Lusitanius, another kind of, to me is regular production stuff. It kind of goes Sir Winston Lusitanius at the top of that list for me. Cohiba, I kind of gravitate towards the Cohiba Lanceros. The Cohiba Lanceros for me, again, the skinnies. I know everyone's kind of big on the Bahiques, and I listen, it's a good cigar, but given the choice, I'm going with the Lancero over the Bahique, which I realize is, sacrosanct, but I love the Cohiba Lancero. I think that's just a great, great cigar. And then probably Quai d'Orsay. I feel like Quai d'Orsay doesn't really get the love it deserves. I don't know if that's just because it's a softer cigar. It's a bit of a thinker. You can't just light it up and sort of go on with your day. You do have to kind of look at it and think about it and sort of work your head through it. But the Quai d'Orsay 50s and 54s, even the 52, those are brilliant cigars. Love those.
I love the Corona Claro. Yeah, I think from a Quai d'Orsay flavor, because I'm not allowed in the walking humidor because I tend to walk out the day's profits. So I normally smoke seconds, which is in our store. It's we go through so many cigars. There's always cracked cigars or something there that goes into our seconds bin. If I see Quai d'Orsay in anything, but specifically the Corona Claro, I'll pick it up. Yeah. I'll actually drop a box occasionally just as if I can crack some. So I can get. But I think that it's such an undervalued line, and that cigar has always been such. Well, it used to be such remarkable value because no one used to smoke. No, well,
listen, we were talking about this on a herf a couple of weeks ago with some friends, and I said, look, I miss the days where I was the only guy buying Trinidad Fundadores. I mean, nobody smoked Trinidad Fundadores. They didn't like the format. They didn't like the marca. They didn't like the profile. And I was like, hey, man, no problem. I will happily pick those boxes up. You pass them on by. I will happily pick them up. I think people have come around. They've realized, wait a minute, these are actually quite good. And obviously it's now kind of the super Habanos premium now. But I miss the days where they were plenty on the shelf and no one picked them up.
Plenty on the shelf, and you can pick them up for $2.80 a box.
Oh yeah, and you could pick up, you'd turn the box over and they were 2010s, 2011s, 2009s, and you're like, yeah, I'll take that, and I'll take that, and I'll take that. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Cigar accessories. What's the one cigar accessory that you love that you couldn't do without?
Well, we were just talking about this in the forum today. The V cutter, this creates so much animosity in the non-Cuban industry because they hate V cutters as manufacturers, but V cutter has been my cutter of choice, my standard cutter for a very long time now. This one is I actually take this along with me to Hearst because for the people who want the straight cut, it's got the straight cut on one side, it's got the V cut on the other. It's a bit beefy, but V cut's kind of my jam. But I would say that sort of non-standard accessory, my wife bought this for me, which is my fancy cigar stand. So this is from what is this company? This is I always get the name wrong. I always want to call them twin. It's Twin Saints, not Twin Engine. Two Saints, pardon me. This is a company out of France. Now, don't look them up. They're very expensive, but they're all handmade, hand carved. This is just, I think, one block of bronze this is carved out of. So you pick it up and you could darn near knock somebody out with this. But, I'll hold it up so you can kind of see the sort of workmanship of it. I mean, it's just a gorgeous gorgeous piece of
What
kit.
a lovely piece. Yeah.
Yeah, and then it, I would never travel with it because I'm just too afraid of leaving it behind. But you can see like there's just wonderful carving on there, and they've got a few different styles, but this was sort of my pick. I do like a cigar stand. I don't trust ashtrays. When I set a cigar down, it does happen, especially when I'm talking. My cigar stand is always at the ready. It's just, yeah, that's kind of my personal favorite piece of kit, I would say.
Just circling back to your V cutter. What do you like
Mm,
about V cutter? Why V cutter?
yeah. Um, so for me, there's a few things. One, there's no thought process. I don't uh, that extra little bit of time to make sure that my cut is, especially for me doing reviews. The last thing I want to do is muck up the cut when I'm doing a cigar review. Granted, I've cut a lot of cigars, so hopefully I'm not messing it up. But the thing for me with a V cut is it's the correct cut, it's the correct depth, and I've always kind of described it as this sort of hybrid world between a guillotine and a punch, because you're getting a perfect cut on the guillotine where you're not taking the cap completely off, but then you get that wonderful depth, and you can kind of see that you get that sort of
Yeah.
wonderful depth on it. And I just find that it just opens the cigar up brilliantly. It doesn't make the draw loose, but it just kind of gets a little bit more mouthfeel with the smoke, I think, for me on the draw. But I've certainly run into a lot of people who find that they don't like that exposed piece of cap. They always say like they find they put their tongue in there and it makes them deeply uncomfortable. And okay, no problem. But I
I'm not
just
gonna go.
yeah.
Uh, I never thought of it like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, outside of cigars,
Mm.
what are the other hobbies? What are your interests outside of cigars?
Well, I'm a bit of a whiskey fiend. I don't know if that's a hobby or a problem or whatever, but I love whiskey, Scotch, bourbon, Irish whiskey, Japanese whiskey. I've been into whiskey longer than I've been into cigars. So kind of a similar trajectory where, fortunately I got into the whiskey thing before the prices went insane, and I'm glad that I did. Call that a passion or whatever. Obviously, I'm a food guy. I mean, I know I don't look it because I've managed to slim down. But I always say, especially when I'm in the States, I eat like a fat guy. Love food. Food to me is just kind of one of those brilliant things. Can't live without it, and I want to enjoy every meal I can. So I'm always looking for new food, new
Always a
food
hard one
experiences.
from the hip. Always a hard one, but from the hip, favorite dish. What would you go for?
Um, if you can get a really great paella, like a really traditional paella, is just it's such a simple dish and such a knockout dish, right? So much going on. Um,
I love the
Paella is
preparation
great.
of it. I love the cooking of paella. I love the sharing of paella with friends.
Yeah.
To do it on the deck on occasion.
Mm,
So I'll get all my prep there, and I'll cook the paella. Everyone's smoking cigars, and then I love the fact that you just lift that pan off after you let it rest for a good 10 minutes with the blanket over the top, and then you put it in the middle of the table. All the guys are around on the deck smoking their cigars. And you take that blanket off, and it's
yeah.
just gorgeous.
The big
And
reveal.
I love the big reveal, and I love the next stage where everyone has a plate, they're sitting down, and everyone scoops out of the middle of the paella dish. And to me, that is one of the great dishes in the world to
Hmm.
share. A lot of love goes into it. It's
Yeah.
not difficult to do once you sort of master it. It's
Yeah.
not difficult, and it's so much fun. It's so much fun. That's cool. You're a music guy too, yeah? You love your music.
I'm not. Here's the funny
Right.
thing. I'm not. I'm not at all a music guy. It's so funny because I keep getting invited on these music shows. Uh, I don't know what it is. I mean, I enjoy music, so I enjoy music, but I always say whenever I'm on the show, I said, look, especially in the cigar industry, the non-Cuban industry, people have to understand there's sort of four types of people in the cigar industry. The number one type of person in the cigar industry, believe it or not, is musicians. So if you go in there and you talk to a brand owner, it is remarkable. These guys have played drums or saxophone or clarinet or bass guitar or guitar, and they've been doing it for 30 or 40 years or 50 years in some cases. It's incredible. You've got your lawyers. So that was kind of the second wave. You musicians and your lawyers. I'm trying to think what the third. Now I've forgotten what the third industry is, but the fourth industry, which is kind of the new wave industry, is the sort of people like me, the IT geeky people, the technology people have kind of moved into the space. But no, Rob, man. I don't know what it is about music, but I just cannot wrap my head around the history. I just can't recall those factoids, the band information, the track information. So I would say, like, if there's a trivia contest, you want me there because I have this encyclopedic knowledge of random factoids. But when it comes to music, when there's a music question, it could be an album that I've heard 1,000 times. Don't ask me the question because I'm going to get the question wrong. I'm just so awful, terrible at just, I mean, literally the lowest IQ in the cigar industry for music. It's terrible, appallingly bad.
Yeah. When you smoke a cigar at home by yourself, not talking about when you're smoking it by yourself, what do you have on the background?
So I'm always watching movies. I'm a movie guy. I love movies. I feel like in a different life I would have been an actor. I mean, this face probably wouldn't have got me in the industry, but I could see myself behind the camera, being an editor or a sound guy. I love every part of movies. I love the choreography. I love music composition. I love sound effect composition, staging, acting, scripting, the dialogue. So to me, I mean, I know it's, everyone watches movies, but like I really, really love watching movies, especially bad movies. I feel like you can learn as much from bad movies as you can from good movies. And I just love sitting down with just a fantastic piece of cinema where you kind of have to rewind at times and go, hold on, how the heck did he just get that shot? You're like, I just watched that and it just went right over my head. And you kind of go back and you're like, the composition in that scene was just incredible. The amount of thought that he put into that shot. So I love being on a movie when I'm smoking by myself in my lounge. I just sort of kick up, put on a movie. Could be something I've seen before. Could be something new. And it's about the right running time for me, typically because I am a slow cigar smoker. So, if it's 2.5 hour movie, perfect. That's exactly one cigar for me.
Mate, you are a detail person, yeah?
I'm a detail person.
A detail person.
Yeah.
You love that. Actually, you and Kenny Gargett would be great to have lunch one day.
He crushed me on the wine knowledge. He is so knowledgeable about wine, and I am definitely a novice when it comes to wine. So
yeah, just never let him order. When you go to lunch, can I give you?
Oh my God!
Never let him order it because you'll be picking up the check.
Yeah.
So I've been caught out a couple of times with that.
I'm sorry. Last two things. I'm an OG video game guy. So like I'm a Gen Xer and I was into technology and video games at the very onset of, back in the days where video games were text-based and then they became ASCII-based and then they, finally got into graphics. So I've literally been video gaming for, call it 43 years. And I love video games. I started on essentially pre-Atari type video games and then, Atari, and then sort of all the different console systems and PC systems. Love video games. Yeah.
Video games,
Video
cigars,
games.
whiskey. You got a lovely lounge there at home. I know you built a beautiful cigar smoking lounge. So
Yes.
when does your wife see you? So,
It's a negotiation for sure. I mean, you know, I would say if I was a single guy, I would be in my lounge probably most of the day. I mean, I would probably start my day with a cigar and a coffee. I'd have a cigar with lunch. I'd have a cigar pre-dinner. I'd have a cigar with dinner. I'd have a cigar post-dinner. But the reality is, you know, life balance. So especially with the review cycles, because you know, I'm more often than not, I'm spending most of my time reviewing cigars when I smoke. So I kind of have to position that on a time when my wife is working or she's got other activities going on. And so I make copious use of our Google Calendar, Google shared calendar to sort of slot in when that smoking time is going to be. And then, you know, when I'm writing up the review, I have to be very careful about making sure that time is managed effectively and not stepping on the couple time. That'll get me in hot water. So
yes, yes, hot water. Yes, fully aware of that little scenario.
mhm.
Yeah, John, John McTavish, cigar surgeon. Thank you so much for
Thanks, Rob.
spending this deep dive with ourselves with FOH. Thank you for your contribution to FOH over the years. I'm sure will
Thank you.
continue for years to come. It's always a pleasure to catch up, and I look forward to seeing you on the forum.
Thanks for
Take
having me
care,
on. I
mate.
really appreciate it.
It's been an absolute blast. Cheers.
Appreciate it, brother.